I show 9 o'clock. I'm going to call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order. We have established a quorum. All members are present. Moving right ahead with the minutes from April 29th, which I think, was it, John, did you take those? Yes. I can't keep these things straight. Thank you very much for doing that. And by the way, Kathy is our scribe today, which I appreciate. Do we have any changes or corrections, anything, those minutes? If not, I just need consensus to accept them. Second? Okay. By acclamation, we'll take those. We're going to move right into the April 21 financials with Pete Finelli. Pete?
Thank you, Ann. Good morning, everyone. Hey, April's results were favorable to budget in all three categories: revenues, expenses, and capital related. On the revenues in the upper left, I believe for the first time in FY 2021, our revenues have exceeded the budget. This occurred because golf revenues continued their strength, but equally tenant card revenues exceeded budget. It appears visitors are renting out space in the wake of travel openings and facility usage since the COVID rates have dropped. And also in golf, merchandise and food and beverage at the golf courses exceeded budget for the first time as well, with the clubhouse openings as well. So overall, revenues exceeded budget by $71,000. Moving to expenses, as mentioned earlier, the expenses were favorable to budget in most all categories, with the only one being in excess by any materiality, being interest and financial expenses. And this is where our bank charges are posted, and it reflects the acceleration of credit card payments, particularly as usage of the portal continues its ascendancy as a payment option for members. Overall, expenses are favorable to budget by $74,000, so added to the revenue excess, the operating margin was favorable by $145,000. Moving to capital related in the bottom left, APFs continued their strength with an excess of $38,500 or about 11 APFs above our budget. And on the investment of the reserve funds, after 3 to 4 months of declining bond valuations, they had a renewed strength due to a declining 10-year Treasury yield, and equities were pretty stable. So overall, the funds increased their valuation by $317,000. And so all told, capital related was ahead of budget by $370,000, which when you add to the $145,000 operating excess, created an overall income statement favorable of $515,000. Moving briefly to prior year, again, golf operations and almost all activities such as special events, bowling, pro shops were suspended in COVID in April of 2020. So our revenues this year exceeded prior year by $928,000. Some of these closures favorably impacted the expenses in the prior year. So the expenses grew this year by $204,000, but overall an improved margin against prior year of $723,000. Capital related, as I presented last month, March of 2020 was a significant hit in the March of 2020 valuation of the reserve funds. And as you can see, the equity markets recovered in April of 2020 by about 1.347 million. So overall, April of 2021 was going up against a significant recovery, and overall then capital related was down 910,000. But you'll see in a second that year to date we're still well ahead of prior year, and I'll mention that in a few minutes. Overall, therefore, our income statement was down by $187,000 against prior year. Moving to the year to date, the right side of the presentation, as mentioned earlier, our revenues have been mostly negative year to date until April due to closures. And therefore, through 10 months, we are short to revenue by $796,000. However, expense management has more than offset that decline, being favorable to budget by about $1.6 million. So therefore, that creates an operating margin favorable of $833,000 to 10 months. Capital related, when the association rebalanced its reserve funds in November, we recognized realized gains at that time and also some impact into the reserve income, such that you have to take all three of those, combination of the income, the realized and unrealized gains, and when you add all three of those together against budget, we're about 1.3 million ahead year to date. Very strong showing in APFs, and that, as I mentioned earlier, that continued in April. So the, year to date, we're ahead by 455,000, and therefore overall against budget with the 2.1 million favorable capital related and 830,000 operating. Right now, we're about just under 3 million favorable against budget. Against prior years, our revenues up $1.4 million. Expenses, are essentially flat. So overall our margin is up 1.4 million. I mentioned earlier that in capital related, despite a downtick against prior year in April, we're still about 1.1 ahead on the realized and unrealized, and 185,000 on the income. APF's extremely strong. So overall, capital related up 1.7, which added to the 1.4 million operating. We're about 3.1 million ahead of prior year. So continued strength throughout the association, and we hope to finish the year in a favorable setting.
We have any questions for Pete? John? Lisa? No. Gary?
Pete, just could you elaborate on the interest and financial? You mentioned that people are using the portal with credit cards. I know our credit card expenses probably up, but what kind of percentage do we pay?
Roughly 3%. I think it's maybe 2.5 to 3%. I'll get an affirmation of that, but people that used to pay, a lot of people used to pay by check. But
So that's the difference. They're,
yes,
because they're not coming in to
correct.
pay by check, they're using their credit cards. Thanks.
Kathy? No. Harry? No. Luke? Okay, then do we have consensus to accept these and show them as filed?
Yes.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and have Pete do the update on capital and reserves.
Thank you again, Ann. Not a considerable amount of changes from prior month. Just a refresher, we have a budget of 5.9 million. We've expended 5.8 million of purchase orders to date, 370,000. The exact same number as prior year, because we're getting to that point where prior year encumbrances have been addressed. So on the current year's budget, 5.4 million of the 5.9 have been purchase ordered. So we're getting really close to, moving forward on virtually everything. Here's where we stand on what we call closed purchase orders. The item's been received, fully paid for, and against that, 2.89 of the 5.8 million that have been purchased ordered, we've had savings of 321,000. And we used some of that as, for those of you that, were part of the governing board last month, we had the unexpected increase in the metal shop expenditure, but this is why it was important to have those savings so that we could make that fact and finding approval without any encumbrance upon the reserve funds. Very limited number of items, therefore, waiting for a final proposal on the locker rooms, and that's getting very close. And then just a smattering of items that I use the threshold of 30K, just an arbitrary number, but has about 12 items that we are still evaluating for need for the purchase. And of course, if we still have the need, we'll just encumber it into the next year. So it's going to be a very limited number of encumbrance as we exit out of this year. Moving to the allowances, I think there was one additional item added to the safety and structural from the prior month, but overall, we retain 171,000 of balance as we enter the last 2 months of the year. So this is kind of hard to read, I realize, and quite bluntly, it didn't change at all. So unless there's any questions, I won't go through it like I do with any detail. We should exit out of the year, though, with a 28 million or so reserve fund balance, as well as a FFB percent funding of about 55%, which is well within our approved range for the association against the industry standards. Any questions on this? The range is typically as low as 30% to be considered low risk. 70% and above is considered almost gold standard. The board has 40% floor, so we're well above that and should be able to withstand any changes and unexpected expenditures or things. Thank you.
Yes, just a quick one. I'd like to make maybe a clarifying comment for Gary. That 55% from my standpoint is really good because we are looking at some abnormally high capital expenditures in the next couple of years with the irrigation. So we're really positioned the way we need to be to get through that. We're going to see that dip. So to me, it really looks good. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Good observation, John. Thank you, Pete, for that. I'm going to go ahead and jump to item 3.08, which is a discussion about capital projects and rec center closures. And Carl, would you like to join us up here at the table where we've got you can sit and we've got a microphone for you? As you may recall, last month when we had our discussion of capital projects over 50K for the budget, there were some questions about Kuntz being closed. And I've asked Carl to be here. I wanted to continue the discussion because it started here. And if we want to move anything forward to the board, then I think this is where it would come from. And we have in our midst today 4 people who will be on the board next year. So I think this gives them a good starting point, me included. So Carl, why don't you first give us all the update that you've had, and then we'll just have a little discussion about it. Is that okay?
Very good. Very good questions were asked at the last at the last Budget and Finance meeting about scheduling of projects, specifically the Kuntz is where the discussion began. And we were going through line item by line item of the above $100,000 project line items. So the question was asked, would Kuntz be closed? I did say yes, and I immediately went into conversation about that the project planning for that would be done with options for a one mobilization at a cost savings or a multiple mobilization option at the unknown at the time. What savings would that create? But based off of the history of Palm Ridge being an approved project, that day I did not have the numbers in front of me to be able to just say what our exact savings was. But so over the last couple of weeks, I've simply went and collected my notes and then had a couple conversations with the future bidding vendors. So what I'll share with you today, I am out for bid currently for Kuntz projects, for the Kuntz project for asphalt mill and replacement. I did ask for multiple options, single and dual mobilization, so that the parking lot can be either scheduled at an efficiency one time, close the rec center, and see what that cost would be, or doing it in 2 phases, a north parking lot separated from a south parking lot. The Palm Ridge history is that we went into contract for $547,573 with a one mobilization staff discussion on what was, the best answer here. To give you an idea, the increase that if we would have done multiple mobilizations at Palm Ridge, it was $34,119 in additional cost. So between the scheduling of other projects that can be handled while the closure's down, the time frame of 4 weeks as opposed to extending the time frame due to multiple mobilizations, even though that would have allowed access to this facility by users in a phasing approach, the cost that did get questioned was a difference of $34,119. So moving on from Palm Ridge, which is a scheduled event, it is a single mobilization. It will be a 30-day project, weather permitting, and having that savings. I did honor the request that was asked of me last time, and at Kuntz, yes,
I just have to clarify one thing, because I'm taking the minutes.
I'm sorry.
On the mobilization, define for me what you mean by mobilization. Keeping the facility open, or you say a single and a multiple?
Okay. A mobilization is when the vendor arrives with the equipment to start any phase of the work. So in an asphalt mill and replacement scenario, you have the big leased equipment that shows up and mills the asphalt and gets rid of the existing asphalt, and you end up with a dirt, uneven surface. And then they go through their next phases, which is soil stabilization, compaction, and then when that phase is done, then they go into relaying the new asphalt.
So this all relates to the vendor when you say mobilization?
Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
So if we had a multiple mobilization, we'd be taking a map of our rec centers and creating dividing points. And so the key, though, is in the cost. It's approximately $10,000 per mobilization on leased equipment on the Kuntz. So that is so if you make it one parking lot, mill the whole thing, go through all the phases, we would save about $10,000. Every mobilization for the convenience of our membership is a cost impact of about $10,000 additional dollars.
10 or 1,000?
10,000, yep. And then the second piece of information I has is the difference between doing it in the summer, an August 21, September 21 timeframe versus a May 22. August, of course, is a low season for us, so is May. However, Kuntz does have some activities going on this summer, specifically in the Stardust Theater, craft rooms. So either one, we have community members using the facility. But if we wait from August or September timeframe to the May timeframe, that's approximately additional cost of $28,000 for a total impact with multiple mobilizations of $38,000 to the budget. So I also shared last time, though, based on how I provide the budget information, I have discussions with these vendors, and the industry standard for bidding is approximately $2 per square foot. So we can get, a solid number based on the square footage of the lot size and still have contingency in there in case soils need to be stabilized through a change order or things like that. So, so really it comes down to staff discussing with user members, the clubs that are going on at Kuntz, on how do we want to approach this. An August scheduling moment or a September moment. I don't have the costs yet because the project is out for bid. Like I said, those vendors just gave me, the ballpark of what they will be putting in for the difference between one mobilization and two, and a time frame difference between this summer of '21 or May of '22. So I hope that helps.
Carl, when you talk about the mobilization differences, could you line up for me the access to Kuntz? Does that mean it will be open, or just clarify that for me, please?
So if we were to do two mobilizations at Kuntz, at this point, my idea would be that the north parking lot would get closed down, basically the halfway point from the Stardust Theater, and your access off of Meeker would be closed, and the access all the way to the new installed parking lot behind the wood shop would be closed. So that mobilization would be start to finish, vendors showing up, milling, and then putting down the new asphalt at completion, striping it, and then immediately then reopen and close the southern parking lot, and that access point then would be closed, the two off of R.H. Johnson Boulevard, and then the access between the Stardust Theater corner and the new parking lot at the softball field. So with a two-phase mobilization, two mobilizations, then we have 50% of all of Kuntz opened at one time, and the only inconvenience is somebody might be walking a little further or from a different parking lot that they're used to for their club use. So I hope that helps.
It does, thank you.
Carl, as I recall, you said Kuntz would be closed, was it 4 weeks,
I originally guesstimated 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
I believe it could be less than that, but from a summer scenario, we have monsoon season, so weather permitting is definitely a strong. Right now, the vendors think it's about a week and a half project, but I still would put, set the expectation of approximately 3 weeks, just for safety, just for preparedness, weather, soil stabilization, so.
And would the time frame be about the same if you did it in 2 mobilizations?
Similar, yes.
Very similar.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not going to considerably change the length of the project.
Correct.
It's going to change some cost, but not the length of the
Correct.
project. Okay, thank
Now,
you.
in the Palm Ridge scenario, that would have been different. That would have added approximately 2 weeks. I have that information too. So that would have been a 6-week project as opposed to a 4-week project, so.
Okay. And as I understand it, we're at a point now with the Palm Ridge project. We've signed those contracts and we're committed to that. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay. Well, our thoughts are a little too late, but we appreciate what you're bringing to us today. And I'd like to get questions and discussions from this committee and how you think we might want to handle this. So John, I'm going to start over there with you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Carl, first of all, I asked some of those questions that prompted your research. I want to thank you. Not only did you grab the numbers, but your command of all of that detail is astounding to me. So, thank you. With that said, I think we can write off the Palm Ridge as learning. It's prompted this up here, and I think that's a very positive change to prompt the discussion. From my point of view, the important thing was to get the facts and get them out on the table where it can be discussed, and I think that's been accomplished quite well. In terms of my comments about to go back to the Kuntz job and then to a larger picture, on the Kuntz job, I would say that for a $10,000 upcharge, and given the great sensitivity that the community has had with shutdowns, both in the last year and specifically at Kuntz, those folks have been hammered with shutdowns over the last couple of years with the remodel and all. And the craft clubs have no alternative. They're sort of stuck. If we shut down the facility, they're out of luck. And I think probably a larger than average percentage of our population in the summer, maybe we have more residents full-time that go to Kuntz than maybe some of the other places. So in terms of the great sensitivity and the fact that our budget coming out of this year, we weathered this year quite well. And so if you take a multi-year point of view of our revenue streams and our expense streams, I think the community could easily afford a $10,000 mobilization to keep that open. So that's my point of view, and if it comes up for vote, that's how I would lean. However, I'm anxious to hear what others have to say about it. Finally, in terms of the overall bigger picture to the thing, I think it would be a best practice for the community to always have both numbers in our thinking as we go forward, the with and without shutting down the facilities. And I think that would lead to fact-based decisions. I think it would create much more transparency for the community about how the funds are being spent and where they're being spent. I don't see any downside to it, and I think allowing our elected representatives of our owner members to have visibility to that and be able to discuss it and weigh in for the good of the community, the entire community, is a better practice than just working with the one number, whether it be with or without the mobilization. So for a best practice, I think we should always be showing the two numbers going forward, because if it's an exorbitant upcharge, we may want to say no. We may want to say yes if it's a small number. We may want to say yes if the budget would support it with overages from, or savings from other projects. There's a whole bunch of dynamics that I just think people would be better served by having the visibility, and I don't see any benefit to not having those numbers of, and again, one last comment, and thank you to Carl. I appreciate the way you approached getting the answers, Carl, and again, I'm in awe with your command of all these projects.
John, just for clarification, as I understand, when you're saying that going forward, we should have two scenarios, that would be when there is going to be a full closure of a facility, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for
Which
clarifying that, yeah.
Where fortunately doesn't happen often, and I think Carl's thinking, will I be retired when we have to do Palm Ridge and
Yeah.
Coots again?
No, just when it involves
Yes.
a closure and therefore an impact on
Correct.
our owner members.
Yes.
And I do believe that, you know, COVID has had a great impact because I work very closely with the clubs when it comes time to meeting their requests for expansion and stuff like that. And, you know, just to put it in perspective, the Kuntz timeline last year by no means was affected by COVID. It was an unfortunate convenience, if you will. However, everybody stayed open. There was no closures for Kuntz, just to kind of put that out there. The only thing that was closed was the two clubs that were getting their expansion. So we worked diligently with the wood shop to create a safety plan, fencing. The wood shop had full access during that large-scale project. Softball, in advance, had an agreement with the staff that they didn't have anything scheduled through the summer months, so there was no inconvenience at the softball. So I just want everybody to know during project planning, if this touches clubs, those clubs have had communication with me. Eileen Freeberg and Ken Holtz, who had a huge part to play with the discussions of pickleball this year. They knew about this closure for the 30 days. They were asked their opinion. They had no negative comments about the 30-day closure. I realize that there are two folks, but one of them is the lead of a 1,200-person club, and I value their input. And I think it was also a season that's difficult to get people's input. COVID, you know, they were out of town. Some of them might not have been here to even care that pickleball was closed at that time, you know, to get a real honest conversation. So I know it's inconvenient, but we do the best that we can in our project planning, and it really is discussed with a lot of users. So, thank you.
Thank you, Carl, for that input. Lisa, do you have any questions or comments?
I do. Carl, first off, thank you. I really appreciate all of this information. You definitely, I think, went above and beyond as far as answering all of our questions that we had from the last meeting, and I really appreciate it. Well done. And then my sentiments echo John's. Pretty much, I think he said it all, and I don't think anybody is going to have anything else to say beyond what John said. I think absolutely, and I would agree exactly with what John said as far as, you know, Palm Ridge is a done deal, but going forward, I think, you know, I would be for sure in favor of the Kuntz, you know, vote.
Gary?
Thanks again, Carl, for your work. I'm not, I don't have a dog in the fight, so to speak. $10,000 sounds like an insignificant amount of money. It isn't. I think folks are used to that kind of thing happening, and what you just said about last year kind of swayed my feeling about it, because I thought the initial comment was that there was some inconvenience on the part of the last year, but not so. So have you talked to the clubs at this point about the potential closure?
Of which facility?
At Kuntz?
At this point, there was no need yet because we were just in the budget approval cycle.
Okay.
And again, when the question was asked about will it be closed, I said yes. But I said the scheduling of that would be either in part based on finances, a single mobilization, or a dual, and we're just not that into the schedule yet, you know what I mean?
Got it.
Literally, regardless of our approval process the key component was the yes of the governing board, line item by line item. So I am out to bid now. So based on the true data, then the decision for Kuntz will be truly made. I also mentioned too that it's a tough juggle. You no longer have meetings to have these discussions per se when I receive most of my bids. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
the best judgment is going to get made.
Yeah, the thing that sways me, I guess, is the vendors, 1.5 week, you're smart to go to 3, because you never know what's gonna happen. Somewhere between those two is reality. I'm not sure what the club participation in the month of August is compared to a winter month. I gotta believe it's a third? Maybe half?
This rarely happens too. So really, when it comes down to parking lots, it's a big ask.
Right.
And that is the key component. And we just happen to be in, with all of the impacts of COVID, we just happen to be in the 5-year plan of all of our facilities getting all of their parking lots basically replaced with somewhere in this next 5 years. So just to give you an idea though, right off the bat, R.H. Johnston is so large, it gets done in phases, in mobilizations, but it gets done in actual step-by-step, year after year planning. So down by the activity center, that's year 1. ARC to libraries, year 2. All of this admin area and social hall area is year 3. So here, you never have an impact like that. One of the key factors for Palm Ridge, it's a large parking lot, but it had to do with the lighting planning. We are unaware whether that lighting would need all the conduit replaced due to the wiring replacement due to the new upgraded lights. We're very fortunate. We had no conduit damage. The wires came in, the wires went out. So that factor was important at one time, but it became a moot point, but here you are, you already got this scheduled, you're moving the ship down the lake, so it rarely happens that we close a full facility for that large of a chunk of time. So just take that in consideration. Otherwise, our user groups are definitely involved. Another example would be the metal shop. I mean, that is a large club, and that club has met with me for the last 6 months on project planning. And I have to say that for a club that big, there has been 0 negative feedback on the fact that they just closed their doors this week, and that's a compliment to the leadership of that club, showing the vision of what they're gonna get when the project is over. But, there are users that wish they had that shop open during the summer, and so.
I guess my last comment is I have total confidence in you and what you do, and the fact that you've looked at all possible avenues. Your recommendation will always sway me over whatever the feeling that I might have.
Thank you, sir.
Carl, the one rec center you didn't mention is Beardsley, but Beardsley has 2 distinct
2.
parking lots, and so that would never be an issue, I understand.
And also on a separate year phasing, so like parking lot 1, I track them as if they were one parking lot, but I would do arts and crafts in 1 year, and I would do the
fitness center?
Fitness center in the second year, yeah.
Okay,
Or a multiple mobilization in one year, depending on where we're at budgetarily, financially,
okay.
so.
Thank you, that clears that up then. Kathy?
Thank you, Carl. I was the hardest on you, I think.
It's okay.
And I appreciate the information and the level of detail, although I would like to have someone like him. You need to know that level of detail, so I appreciate that. Thank you. I too, in the big picture thinker, and trying to keep, default to keeping our facilities open for our membership. I'm with Lisa. I haven't been here that long, but I feel a trend towards more people becoming more year-round. And I think we need to be cautious in defaulting to summertime as the time to close things. So I've heard good conversation in this, so I'm confident that we look at that. I do support the extra $10,000 for the multiple mobilizations, because I do believe Coons has been hit exceptionally hard during this COVID, and they were open and closed and, kind of start-stop. So I would support that, and would like to have not just, I would like options that come forward to the Budget and Finance. I don't want to say just, it's either this way or this way, so multiple options. I think I would just clarify that in our thinking, and I thank you for your information in detail.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Harry?
Thank you, Carl. And most of my thoughts and comments have already been discussed, so I don't see going through it again. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. Are there any other projects that you can think of that might have alternate costs other than the parking lots and closing facilities?
I've been thinking about that since we brought it up here, and it really, it doesn't happen often. It's, I think it's been, the idea of project planning is even thought about well before we get our bids. So what's the best plan? And again, I'll refer back to Kuntz's last year projects. The absolutes would be weavers and quilters would be closed because their direct rooms of use would be impacted. They were asked, do you require an alternate space during this time frame? The club agreed that no. Based on the projected time frame of that project, they could live without their quarters and working space. The metal shop, again, I was not a proponent of it, I'll be honest. For safety reasons, having these ladies and gentlemen coming in and out of that building right in the middle of a major construction zone was a little daunting. So we made the exception, we put up safety fencing, and it worked out good. So again, I don't think that it happens very often where when I come to deliver the budget information to you for approval, but if I see it, like when the question was asked originally, would we close? I did say right up front, that we were considering the options, so.
Great.
That's that, thank you.
Second question, you said that the mobilizations are about 10K each,
Yes, sir?
so Kuntz would be at about 10 because it would be a two-phase project,
Correct, one additional.
and Palm Ridge would also be 10?
Palm Ridge was impacted by two things, so it was a price increase in materials based on the time frame. So if it extended into the 6-week, 6 to
28
8,
you talked about.
beyond what I originally had kind of worked with them on, pricing was going up in the asphalt world.
And that's
Okay,
the 28,000 versus the,
in Palm Ridge was $34,119. So at minimum, we would have had $20,000 in mobilization impacts,
that's where it is, okay.
okay? And a price increase there, so.
Okay, great. That's all the questions I have. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you. I'm sensing a couple of things here, and one of them is how we will handle this in general going forward. And I believe that is something that needs to be addressed policy-wise, and that would come under policy FIO2, which is capital expenses budgeting. So I believe that is the best way to handle that. And I think at this point in time, that that is something that this committee can address in the fall when we start reviewing policies. The other thing, though, that I'm sensing is a feeling of possibly making a recommendation to the board about the funds for Kuntz. Am I reading my committee correctly?
Yes, but I do have a question, Ann, on that.
Yes.
Does the manager now have that flexibility with the savings in the capital projects without going forward?
I have a
Talking
bud,
about Palm Ridge?
I'm talking about Kuntz.
Kuntz is in next year's budget.
Oh, okay.
you have approved a budget number that is greater than what I expect the cost to come back to. So based on the benefits evaluation of two things, a mobilization, which I believe is a yes, is what I'm hearing, that we should do it in two phases, two mobilizations.
Well, this is what our committee would
Yes,
recommend.
Yep.
Yes.
but the other thing is then what comes back to really a staff decision is what's the best season? So is it, can I get this accomplished? I don't know that yet. The bids aren't back. I don't know that the vendors are available in August. I don't know that we want to battle monsoon season. So the decision to make it in May of 2022, that would be an internal decision. But our budget's approved, so that just would be the cost of a project. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but as I understand it, has the board done the final vote on the budget? No, okay. George, excuse me, what would you like to tell us?
Thank you, Madam Treasurer, Chairman, Chairperson, all the above. First, if it's above 50,000, up to 100, or 100 above, that has already been approved to be put into the budget for next year. Okay? We will be voting on Thursday to approve the overall operational general manager's budget. But that, the project dollars for Kuntz have already been approved for this. So if you'd like, you can amend it by a motion and a second at our meeting. However, that is not normal procedure that goes with this. Thank you.
Our committee doesn't always do normal things, you know.
I don't think the word normal and me should ever be used in the same sentence.
King George, our president, is it possible for us to bring a motion to the governing board that when the Kuntz project comes up, we evaluate one or two mobilizations? Because Carl doesn't know yet when this can be done. If it can be done in August, September.
You can always come back with the facts and findings to change what is in the budget. So in other words, I'll just use an example. Let's say this project is $25, okay? If in fact you come in and say, okay, we look at a mobilization, we'd like to split it, and it's going to be $34, you can always come back, do facts and findings, and change that portion of it. But going forward, you really need to have a line item in there with a number and how much is approved, whether it goes one way or the other to start with.
Well, as I understand it, though, Carl's going to be getting those bids in the summer. We won't be meeting, the board won't be meeting.
Well, to that point, what he has is he has a bidding process that's out there, and he based the amount of the budget on what that estimated bid would be, plus or minus, I mean, obviously. With that said, I know Carl's got something to say about this, but you can always go back on any line item in there with the facts and findings and have it amended or changed throughout the year.
Okay, but if he's
Look at
trying
me
to
like I
do
got
this
two heads.
in August or September, we won't have that option, correct?
Well, if that, no, you can always have it. Our bylaws are very distinct. You can always call for a meeting, as long as you're available, which is what a director is. You can always do it via a Zoom meeting, not Zoom meeting,
Join me.
join me meeting or via a phone call with the president at that time. That you can always do that. And that's something that's, as long as you have unanimous consent, you can go forward at that.
Thank you. Carl?
I'm trying to make it easier, maybe I'm complicating it, but I'm just going to use an example, but Budget and Finance recommended a $300,000 project. And then the governing board eventually approves that $300,000 project. In this scenario here with the parking lot, the $10,000 for adding a mobilization is, unless you just felt like that's a waste of money, it's irrelevant. I have enough money. And if I changed it from summer to fall of the next year, I have enough money. So I don't know if that's helping you, that you've approved enough that I'm covered.
Okay.
Am I missing something, or?
No, I'm just trying to see how we can kind of document this so that we don't, I mean, I don't want to, try and think how to say this. I'd like to see that the process is there for 2 mobilizations, and you're telling me you've got the money to do that, so I don't.
You've given your recommendation to make it 2 mobilizations. I will honor that,
Okay,
regardless
Okay.
of what season, 21 or 22. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying?
okay. Is the committee comfortable with that? Lou? Yes.
During the budget process, you know, it's typically a line item process of approval. During that approval process, I would make a motion that this project should be a 2-phase project, period, end of story. The funding's already there. It's just a matter of approving a mobilization, a 2-phase project as opposed to 1. I think it's that simple. I mean, I don't think we have to beat this dog to death, but they're my thoughts.
So okay, so we have a motion from Lou to make the Coons project a 2-phase mobilization. Is that correct? Okay, do I have a second to that?
I say, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
I think John got it there first.
Who did? Who did? I gotta
John.
get this right, you know?
John, Lou
I got it.
Lou made the motion, John
John
second.
seconded.
Okay, do we have any more discussion that we want to have on this? Anyone? Then we'll call for the question.
And I just have a
Yes,
question real
go
quick.
ahead.
Carl, does that mean that there was a buffer in that bid?
Yeah, we don't use the term buffer, we use contingency.
Okay, perfect, that's all.
And that's why I've been
Excellent.
very open
Excellent
that
job.
the industry standard is $2 a square foot.
Excellent job, thank
I
you.
know what our history is of what the average of 3 to 4 bidders come in at in that range. And the unknown in asphalt world is soil stabilization. So with what you've recommended, I've got enough. If for some reason we tore that parking lot out and we did not have good soils and we went above and beyond what you approved as the budget, if it's within the general manager's signing authority of 50,000 or less, I'd still move forward with that project.
Good,
If it was above and beyond that, I would go to the governing board with the facts and findings and ask for more, so.
good.
Thank you,
That's-
Carl, appreciate
I
that.
think this is sounding like a win-win for, for all of us, which is what we like. Anybody else have, Pete? Oh, behind me.
And hello, I
Sorry,
just want to
Bill.
make a quick summary.
Yes.
We've heard you, and we've got the recommendation, and I believe a vote regarding the options on a split package as far as the closure goes, so we understand that. So once Carl has numbers, and we bring that forward, it's going to go to the governing board at their agenda for them to ultimately decide 1 piece, 2 piece.
Okay.
And at that point, it'll move forward at that point.
So do we need to send a recommendation to the board from this committee, do you think?
That would be a wise decision.
That's what I was thinking to do.
Yep, perfect.
Thank you so much. Any other comments? Well, I think we'll just take a vote. John?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes, please.
Gary? Yes. Kathy?
Yes.
Harry? Yes. Lou?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. And I want to thank several people in this process. First of all, Kathy and John for raising an excellent question and bearing with us to get some answers, but especially to Carl, who has just really come through in great shape for us and given us all, I think, an education on how these projects work. And I appreciate very much your willingness to bear with us number nerds who are very into specifics and what have you. So,
My pleasure.
and I will move this forward to the workshop for the board in June, and then it'll be voted on at the end of the final meeting in June. Thank you very much. Carl can go back and get some real work done. Next is the recommendation on our policy FI 17 redlined. We discussed this policy last month. We approved the red lines in under 3.4 section of exemptions, but we still had questions on the items under 3.1, which were the establishment of the asset preservation fee. So I believe it was John and Lisa. John and Lisa met with Pete and also with our APF expert, Deb Long. And who's going to give a report on this? John is.
Thank you. I guess I was the curmudgeon that threw up the stop sign. We did meet. We had a very positive, very constructive meeting, and very educational. I was educated through probably a great deal of patience expressed by Deborah, Pete, and Bill. So I now understand this, and I think it's the best thing we can do as a community is to move forward with this as written. Enough said.
So no changes from what was originally proposed, is that correct?
That's correct.
And Lisa, you concur?
Absolutely.
Okay. I guess we need a motion and then we can discuss.
I'll make the motion since I was the troublemaker. I make a motion that the Budget and Finance Committee move forward with a recommendation to the governing board to accept the revisions in FI 17 as presented to us today.
The red line provisions, thank you. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Okay, let's go around discussion. Lou, you have any questions?
No comment.
Harry? Kathy? None. Gary? No, well done. Lisa, I'm assuming you don't have any further comments? John? No. Okay. Call for the question. John? Yes. Lisa?
Yes.
Gary? Yes. Kathy? Yes. Harry? Yes. Lou?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much, and I appreciate, again, Deb's input on this, as always, because she's our professional with this. And Pete and Lisa and John, thank you for your time getting this resolved. The next item is our professional investment advisor selection. And refreshing everyone's mind, Gary, you were not on this committee at the time we started this. I believe it was maybe November, maybe December, but we met and had a group. John and Lou were very instrumental in this, getting an RFQ presented, and we moved forward with that, I believe, in February. Did those go out, Pete?
They did. I'll wait for your summary and then
So
expand
they
on it
went
or-
out in February. We sent out, of course, to Vanguard, who has been working with us, and JP Morgan has been carrying our CDs. Believe you also sent to Wells Fargo and Chase at that time?
Chase is JP Morgan,
Oh,
essentially,
that's true.
but,
You sent to Wells
yeah,
Fargo. Who else?
Wells Fargo, who is the investment advisor over at Grand Capital Planning, which is the investment advisor at Sun City.
You mean
Acute-
creative planning?
Creative Planning? Yeah,
Yes.
correct, thank you. Several others. that were listed within the top 14 investment advisors for the greater Phoenix area. And ultimately, 8 RFQs were submitted.
Okay, and we heard back from 6, is that correct?
Correct. We then extended an interview process with the 3 representatives, Mr. Schwinn, General Manager, Treasurer, and myself. I don't know if you want me to carry forward, or actually, I'll let you, but yeah, we
I'll
then.
probably have questions here for
Sure.
you, but we had 6 initially, and we set up about a 1-hour meeting with all of them, and I believe J.P. Morgan is the only one that was in person the first go-around. Is that correct?
The COVID
Yeah.
restrictions, yes.
Yeah. The others were all on Zoom calls. We had, in addition to J.P. Morgan and Vanguard and Creative Planning, we had another Cap Trust and Fitzgerald and Alpha. And at the end of the first round, we wanted to move forward with everyone except Fitzgerald and Alpha. So we had another set of meetings, and these, we sent them out specific questions that we needed answered. And along with this, we developed a questionnaire for the 3 of us to use because we wanted to be able to do this in a quantitative manner. We know there's some subjectivity involved in any kind of decision, but we wanted to be able to quantify. So we developed a little sheet for ourselves that has 9 questions on it, and or 9 criteria, I should say, and then we gave weights to those criteria because some are more important than others. And I would love to be able to show this to you right now, but quite frankly, we just finished up this at the last minute. And so I cannot show you anything that was not available to be presented 48 hours in advance for the agenda. This will be made public and go forth to the board for the workshop. It can be an attachment. But I will just share with you what we have. The questions were, first of all, an investment portfolio consisted with our bylaws and policies. They all received our bylaws and policies, and that had a weight of 3. Their knowledge of the financial industry also had a weight of, that had a weight of 2, I'm sorry. Their fee structure had a weight of 3. An array of fixed income options available and diversification of portfolio. That had a weight of 2. The strength of the firm had a weight of 2. Familiarity with nonprofit and/or retirement community investing had a weight of 2. Their reporting structure had a weight of 1. Their presentation quality was 1. And their questions were answered in a timely manner was 1. So we came forth for our second interviews. The only one that was not live was Vanguard because they had some COVID restrictions. And so we met with all of them, and then Bill and Pete and I each did our own assessments and made comments about them. And it was interesting, we were all pretty close on everything, as you'll see when I can attach the spreadsheet for this to the minutes. I just can't share it because of the open meeting laws. But I can tell you that the firm that we want to move forward with is known as Cap Trust. It has 61 locations throughout the U.S. They do have a very large presence here in Phoenix. They have familiarity with some retirement communities and HOAs as far as their background goes. When we tallied all the votes, they received the most. They had 237 out of a possible 270, which gave them 88%. Second was Creative Planning. They are out of Overland Park, Kansas. They, their lead person is from St. Louis, Missouri, And she came out for the meeting along with a gentleman from their office in California. But they handle everything for Sun City. They came highly recommended. We liked them, but they didn't measure up quite as high as Cap Trust did. Third was JP Morgan. No, I'm sorry. Third was Vanguard with 200 points. JP Morgan came in with 181. So I will entertain a motion, and then you can ask me questions about them. So Pete and Bill and I have tallied, and we think that Cap Trust is the best one, but we would have to have a motion from somebody if we move forward with that. So move to have to hire Cap Trust, and lose a second. I'm going to go around and let you all ask me questions, because this is not the way I wanted to present it. It was just a timing issue. So I'm not trying to, I can make all these available, but and I've got it all on a spreadsheet. I had more fun doing a spreadsheet, let me tell you, along with comments about all of them. So fire away. John?
I have no questions. I have one comment. This seems like the three individuals made a very logical and very, very good next step from where Lou and I and Pete had left things. I have no questions. It just sounds like we hit a home run here.
Thank you, John. Lisa?
Yeah, I have no questions. I echo what John said.
Gary?
Pardon the ignorance, but, so this is a change then?
This will be a change,
From
yes, it will.
Vanguard to-
Yes, you were not on the committee last year when we were discussing our policies. One of the policies says that we need to have a professional investment advisor, and we did not, we weren't quite sure that Vanguard was meeting that criteria for us. And that prompted a lot of meetings. John and Lou spent an inordinate amount of time working on this for us, and prompted the whole process. And then the three of us did the interviews and got the criteria. So this will be a change.
Yeah, it sounds like you're incredibly thorough in your evaluations.
Well, we tried to be. Kathy? I'm fine. Harry?
Fine, great job.
Lou?
Yeah, I like the idea of standardized criteria. It just makes things easier. Is a Cap Trust currently representing one of the Sun Cities?
No.
No, okay.
No,
That was
they're
my only
not.
question. Thank you.
They did come highly recommended, and I believe, did Frank had been with Vanguard at one time, hadn't
He was
Yes.
for 20-plus years.
Frank Piles, who is the lead person in the Phoenix area, was with them. A few things that we really liked. First of all, he will do his quarterly presentations in person. But they were the first ones to suggest they will be happy to come and do fiduciary education for our board, for our committees, for whatever we would need, and they volunteered that. They were the first one that I believe we had in our second go-around, and so that prompted us to ask the others, after they were through with their presentations, if they offered any fiduciary education. I believe all the others had things that would be available online. But they did offer that they would come. That was something that they offer, and we felt like that was a nice bonus, because we have board members, we have other committees that might profit from this type of education. Okay, there is a motion made and seconded. We just need to go around. Lou?
So the motion is to present this to the governing board workshop.
It will go to the governing board workshop, and all the attachments will be available by them for them to see too.
Then I agree to move this forward.
And the attachments, I believe I can put with the minutes. Is that correct? So the attachments will be with the minutes.
Very good. Then I agree that we should move it forward.
Thank you. Harry? I agree to move forward. Kathy? Yes. Gary? Lisa?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That, I think we're going to have a good affiliation with them, and Pete will be handling the next phase. This does go to the workshop at our June 4th, I believe it is, meeting, and then it will go to the full board on the 24th of June. So we're still a way out from having any kind of changes made. Yes, Lou?
And will there be any evaluation criteria post them coming on board? You know, what measuring stick are we going to have once they come on as our financial advisors to say, yes, they're meeting this criteria?
Excellent question. I'm going to let Pete answer that.
That's part of our policy, actually. I don't recall the FI number, but it requires the CFO to present annually to BNF, and then, of course, by the governing board, that they're doing what's prescribed in accordance with the policies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go next, Bill, the Briarwood Water.
So as we move forward, we have been reached out to from our friends at Briarwood. Back in '09, there was a contract signed between the rec centers of Sun City West and Briarwood regarding the use of groundwater. And there is currently a lease package that we currently manage. It is for 333 acre-feet of water that we allow a Briarwood to use out of our bank. The term of the contract expires in 2034 with a renewable option of additional 25 years. So Briarwood has been overseeing, obviously, their operations and expenses, and as far as their water use go, over the past 3 years, they've been averaging about 200 acre-feet of water used, but paying us for 333 as per the contract. And so they asked if we could take a look at that and maybe adjust the contract down to a lower number or a pay-as-you-go program type of thing. So our water attorney, if you can go back up one more, Katie, right there you go, thank you. So our water attorney and their attorney kind of got together. We kind of stepped forward initially based on their 3-year average and came forward with an amount of 200 acre-feet of water. And they reviewed that and came and wanted to bring that up a little bit because they have some projects that they think they'd like to see completed. And so as we sit here today, one little change in the contract basically scratched the 333 to a not to exceed 250. The 80-some-odd acres, 83 acres of water that the credits that we come back to us. So we basically put those back in our bank, which is a very, very good thing as we move forward into the world of water conservation. So there's a rent-adjusted formula on how this thing is designed, and this was in the contract back when it was signed. So essentially, that's how it's all calculated. If you care to do some math, one forward, please, Katie. And so looking at the numbers, that's kind of how it all works out. And if you really did the division on that, based on the 250 acre-feet not to exceed, their overall cost of water is about 5 cents a gallon. So it's a screaming deal for those in need of water. But on the upside, they're going to save about $20,000 a year with the revision in the contract. We get to bank an extra 80-some-odd acre-feet of water for us. So that is a major league win-win as we move forward with the Arizona Department of Water Resources, moving forward with Plan 4 and Plan 5 in the Arizona management area. So the big ticket that's out ahead of us is what's called the 5th Management Plan for the AMA through the Groundwater Association, and that is expected to come alive in 2025. Todd Patty will be doing a presentation at the governing board meeting on Thursday after his recent meetings with the Arizona Department of Groundwater, but I think Todd will elaborate at that presentation that things change daily. So he was recently on a phone call with over 250 superintendents of golf courses around the state of Arizona, particularly in the Maricopa County range, talking about where are we going and what's happening and what this potential Plan 5 could potentially look like. And we don't know. And so they don't know. And as this thing continues to fester and grow, we're kind of bracing ourselves for what we feel is coming. But everything that we've been told, I think Sun City West is sitting in a very, very good chair. We've got grandfather rights to these waters. People that are coming in and building new housing developments and trying to establish new golf courses and whatnot are going to face some challenges. Water's tight. And just for like what's an acre foot of water, right, for your own edification and that kind of thing. If you take a football field and you cover it with 1 inch of water, that's an acre foot. Virtually, if you take a hose and stick it in the Empire State Building and fill the Empire State Building with water, that's an acre foot of water. So we use close to 4,000 of those a year. So an acre foot of water is a little over 325,000 gallons. And so we throw about 3 of those a day. All right? So a lot of water. And it sounds like a lot of water until you talk to a farmer in Pinell County. The folks that grow cotton, the folks that grow food to feed us all and whatnot, they are the big users of groundwater. Housing developments, not so much. People tend not to use a lot of water. Golf courses do, but farming is really the big ticket there. And that's kind of what rules the roost. So as we approach 2023, Plan 4 should come in existence, and that's online. If you care to educate yourself as far as Plan 4 goes, that basically looks at all of the acreage that you're using as far as your turf goes on your golf courses, and you subtract out all of the surface area that you have that have lakes on them. So that acreage gets reduced from your turf throw, and that number is then calculated. And if you look at the projected number of gallons of water and the areas of turf that you're legally allowed to irrigate come 2023, we see very, very little, if any, changes to our golf courses that are going to be mandated. I know Todd Patty has a program where I think about 50 acres overall over our 7 courses in really non-play areas. I think he'd like to take off to save us a little bit more water. Not necessary at this point, not mandated, but I think from an operational perspective, I think Todd would like to see that happen. And then we'll see what happens in 2025. But there are plans out there. Obviously, we have 3 larger golf courses, be it wall-to-wall turf, that are really our focus areas, and those are the older golf courses, be it Echo Mesa and Pebblebrook and Grandview. The other courses are more desert-oriented anyway, so they're very reduced in the amount of turf that we have to water. And then, again, come summertime, we throw a lot of water. Wintertime, not so much. With the overseeding and that type of thing, we don't water wall-to-wall at that point. So I think we're in very, very good shape, as does Todd. And again, we are in communication with the Arizona Department of Water Resources on a monthly basis, and things are looking good. But here we are today from a financial process. Briarwood has really come to us in an effort to save them about $25,000 a year on the water that they're paying for or not really using. With a recent improvement, I think, with their pump system over there, I think they put a 12-inch casing in their ground, so they really can't even extract the amount of water that they have rights to because it's a pretty tight collar. They went from a 16-inch pipe to a 12, and you can only get so much water in a pipe. So they are paying for water that they're not using, so they wanted to adjust that. So it went from 333 to 250, not to exceed, and that's why we're here today. Just an amendment to the contract.
Do you need approval from our committee for this to move forward to the workshop
A recommendation going forward would be great.
recommendation? Okay. So if we could get a recommendation and get that seconded, then we can have a discussion. I do want to ask, first of all, just because I believe in full disclosure, does anybody on this committee belong to Briarwood? 2 of you. Do you feel you need to recuse yourselves in this?
Not at all.
Okay. I just want full disclosure for our.
I think the bigger question is, are you on budget or finance for them?
No.
Okay, good question, Kathy. Okay, let's move forward. We have a recommendation, then we can discuss.
I recommend we approve the Briarwood acre-foot reduction plan.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll make a second.
Thank you, Lou. Okay, let's go ahead and go around and discuss it. Lou?
Okay. So we're going to sell, lease less, not sell, I guess the word is lease, less water to Briarwood. And that's going to have a reduction in our revenue from Briarwood of about $25,000. As I understand it, we currently have more water rights than we're actually using. And there was a discussion at one time to lease these water credits, I'm going to call them credits, or water units, to other golf courses, entities, et cetera. Where are we on that?
That option is there and no movement. We don't have someone knocking on our door at this point, and we have not issued any kind of,
Advertisement?
there you go.
Okay,
But we're adding to our bank.
okay. When you say adding to our bank, what benefit is that to us?
Leasable acre feet of water. If we had the 333 tied up for the next 30, 40 years, that's 83 acres feet of water that we would not have to be able to potentially lease.
Okay, I'm just going to call them water units, and that would be acre feet. If we don't use our allotted units in year one, when we go to year two, does that credit carry forward?
No, sir.
So we either use it or lose it.
Yes, sir.
Todd Patty, you indicated that Todd Patty had approximately 50 acres that were considered really unplayable kind of areas that we could have turf removal and make it desert landscaping, correct?
Yes, sir.
Approximately.
He's identified that.
Right, and it should be noted that desert landscaping costs approximately 10% more to maintain than just grass areas. Just so, you know, it always sounds like a good idea, but there is an offset in cost. I know that in 2023, Plan 4 will come into effect. We're still not sure all of Plan 4, is that correct?
It's getting closer, hence that phone conversation that he had with the 200-plus superintendents on there. There is a calculation out, and I think Todd will be presenting that on Thursday, running the amount of acreage that we're currently irrigating based on the Plan 4 calculations. Will give you a total number of acre feet or credits that you're talking about that would be permitted to throw, and that is still below our allotted amount. So good for us.
Okay, and you indicated that all of our golf courses are grandfathered in?
Yes, sir.
All of our golf courses were built before 1985?
No, but it's kind of a,
I think there's
I
two
want to
that,
say it's convoluted. There's
Yes.
two types of water. The only water that you can lease are type 2, right? Type 2 groundwater. And so there's type 1 and type 2. So there's a split in between which courses get which. So it's the older courses that we're talking about.
that have this water surplus, this water acre surplus? Okay. Because we have that, and because it is a valuable asset that we may be able to lease to other entities, should we move forward on, I'm going to use the word advertising or let others know about availability? Is that a good business decision?
It could be, but that would have to be approved by the Arizona Department of Water Resources. And as we sit here right now in the world of conservation and where are we going with Arizona groundwater, not certain that it's going to, until these plans start getting a little more finalized, are they going to allow you to do that? It's still being
So right now,
laid about.
it's just a thought that we should keep in the back of our minds, and should these plans permit that, then we should move forward on that to offset some of the turf removal costs.
Absolutely.
Very good. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Good questions, Lou. Thank you. Harry?
Just one question, and that's because I know Montana law, but not Arizona law. Montana, if you don't use your water rights, you can lose them. Is there any such animal down here?
Not that we're aware of. Talking with Arizona Department of Water, that's, I mean, these are we own these rights.
In Montana, you can own them, but they can take them away from you if you don't use them. That's all I got.
Kathy?
Yes, I have a couple questions. Bill, with the new housing development behind Fry's, and I believe they're going to be able to be considered residents or use of our facilities, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so do we have a separate agreement with them on water use?
No, ma'am, we're talking about two different types of water. Residential water comes from
Okay.
EPCOR, and
Yeah,
this is,
okay, that's
this
good
is
clarification.
groundwater.
Yeah, and then how about Hillcrest? Is that, they have their own
They have-
bank of,
They have their own well and their own irrigation system. Yes, they're an independent agency.
okay, perfect, thank you.
Gary?
So, you've said before that you're glad that they don't look at our individual courses, they look at the lump. Is the lump inclusive of Hillcrest and Briarwood, or are they're separate?
Our 7 courses are contractually, the acre feet that we use to water our 7 is what we are considering our 4,000 plus acre feet of water.
And then I want to know if Hillcrest has 792 acre feet and Briarwood's going to get by with 250, why is Hillcrest in such crummy condition?
I cannot speak for that, but I'm not, the 333 is not all Briarwood uses. That's a supplement.
I'm going to go back and let Kathy ask the second question. She's our scribe.
This says this agreement is up to 250, I believe. If they exceed 250, what are the precautions there? Because as I quickly read the contract, every 6 months you adjust the costs. But if they exceed, you can't just turn the water off and say, too bad for you.
Correct. And then
So-
at that point in time, I mean, we're looking at, that's why we went down to 200.
Do we have a clause in the contract that allows Sun City West to change the costs or recalibrate or whatever it is? I think we need a safeguard there.
Right. They have the ability to withdraw water, and I'm not sure what their actual acre footage is, but how they withdraw water from the ground is actually through a pumping system,
Right.
wells and pipe, right? So they went down from a 16-inch pipe to a 12, so it's the size of the straw.
Right.
You can pump all day and whatnot, as far as, you know, they can't water during the day typically because people are playing and those types of things. So when they withdraw water to irrigate their system, they can only get so much through a straw.
Yeah, I understand that.
And over the last 3 years, they struggled to get 200 that they can't hit are taking all of their allotted water that they have contracted with the Arizona Department of Water Resources and using our 333 supplement, right? They have struggled to get 200 out of the ground because their piping system and their pump system are such.
I understand that because water is such a important issue. And I just feel like how long is this contract for?
Goes through till 2034 and then another 25-year.
I just feel like we need to have a clause in there that, I mean, if they change the pipe size, seriously,
Right.
they're going to withdraw more. But I think we need more of a protection on our end in terms of being able to revisit, recalibrate, rethink, whatever it is.
Right.
That's just my comment.
Right. Well, groundwater, every year you have to fill a form out with the Arizona Department of Water Resources and basically show your pump numbers, right? So we are not we're not going to be fined or nothing really comes back to us. We give them up to 250 acre-feet of water when we do the end-of-year pump numbers. We do that every 6 months, right? And so anything over 250 is on them. So the Arizona Department of Water Resources is the fining agent for them. They can only withdraw so much. So we're not the cops on that. We allow them to use 250 acre-feet of our water. If they exceed that, that's on them and the Arizona Department of Water.
There's no enforcement of that now, though.
Arizona Department of Water. Am I not?
No, you are clear. I just, we have no protection. If they exceed, Arizona Department of Water is not into enforcement. They decide not to be in enforcement because they're, right now, really thinking about the future.
Arizona Department of Water is the enforcing agency.
Yeah, I understand that, but we have a lot of enforcement agencies that don't enforce. I'm looking at just our safety in terms of financially. I think I've said enough, yeah. It's just like police enforce speed limits, but if they don't enforce speed limits, you can go as fast as you want.
Well, every year you have to, every year you have to submit your pump license
Yeah.
number
Okay.
and the amount of gallons you're throwing,
Right,
and that equates to your acre-feet.
I got it.
If you, as a golf course owner, like Sun City West, we have a number we cannot exceed, or else we pay a very, very stiff fine.
And they do that automatically,
Every golf course,
gets fined, or anybody that exceeds.
absolutely.
Lou, you had a question?
Yeah, well, first of all, Kathy, I think that's an excellent idea. Maybe there could be language in there that indicates that the Arizona Department of Water monitors this, and should this number be exceeded, any penalty would be assessed by the Arizona Department of Water. Could also say something to the effect that should a penalty not be assessed to Briarwood for exceeding this amount, then a penalty could be assessed by Sun City West. But I agree, there should be, this is a contract. This is what we're contracting for. What happens if we go beyond the scope of this contract? So I don't think the language has to be very strict, but I think at least should be identified. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to finish up, and then George has something to finish with the committee here. Gary? Lisa?
No questions.
John?
I agree with the comments made by Lou and Kathy. As a safeguard to our community, a little extra language to protect us against non-enforcement by the designated Arizona authorities couldn't hurt. I can't see where it would prejudice the contract in any way.
Thank you. George?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Bill, just a couple questions for you. Has this contract gone through both the lawyers and agreed to by the lawyers?
Yes, sir.
Has it been approved in total by Arizona Department of Water Resources for content for this?
I don't believe the contract has gone to ADWR.
Okay, all right. But it has gone through our water attorney, Briarwood's attorney, and has been approved in content by both parties.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and this is one of the things, and I just want to caution the committee, before you get into the legal ramifications, that's what we have, a water attorney who represents us directly for that goes into the contract. And I will just leave it at that. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. After discussion, we need to vote on the, let's see, the motion was made to move this forward to the governing board. Is that correct? Is the way it's written? Yes. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call for the question. Lou?
I believe there should be language in there regarding noncompliance with the contract.
So you're voting no on the
I am
way that-
voting no, that is correct.
Harry? Yes. Kathy?
I agree with Lou, and I'm voting no.
Gary?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
John?
No.
Well, I believe I'm going to be casting the vote.
Is there, maybe just let me try to explain something here, or maybe a little bit clearer. The water that comes out of the ground to irrigate Briarwood comes out of their pump. And so we don't have an on and off switch when it comes to our water versus their water. It's groundwater. So when the pumps run, it's going to register all the water coming out of the ground. Briarwood pulls water and pulls water and pulls water. At the end of the year, there is a number. They are entitled to X amount of acre feet of water. And we supplement them right now with 333 acre feet of water that they don't touch. They've averaged over the last 3 years about 200 acre feet of water. So if they were to turn their pumps on and continue to let them run forever, and if they withdrew more water from their pump, the Arizona Department of Groundwater is the agency that would deal with them, not us. We're just allowing them to utilize up to 200 acre feet more water than they have rights for. If they choose to exceed their rights, that's on them. We're not the enforcing agency. We just have a contract with them to allow them to use some of our water rights.
Okay. Because we have a tie, I will be casting a vote, and I'm going to
And-
vote yes to,
and-
yes.
Might I just say one thing? Bill, there, and I might change my vote, that's the reason. After Bill said something, I think we have to have, if I may have
Oh,
just a
you
moment
may.
for some additional
Yes.
discussion. So there is language, legal language, with the Arizona Department of Water Resources that confirm what you're saying, that they are the regulatory agency, and should overages of permissible amounts via contracts exceeded, they are in fact the agency that penalizes them.
Exactly.
If there is language regarding that, and would it hurt to have something in there that says that, you know?
Well, every time, when Todd submits the annual reports that we do, I think we're entitled to like 4,300 acre feet of water. And we don't hit that, right? But if we did, and I think back in 2013, 2011, something like that, we did have an overage due to drought, due to some other conditions that were going on, and that type of thing. And we had to pay a fine. We went over. And so that's all regulated by the state of Arizona. But we have since made serious improvements to our golf courses, our irrigation systems, and our lakes and whatnot. And Todd has done a tremendous job reducing the amount of water that we use. So we're not really hitting our ceiling anymore. But, you know, there's not a switch that you flip. If you hit 4,000, boop, the switch goes off. No, it's what you need to use, but you're going to pay a severe fine if you go over your allotments.
Well, then I think it's addressed in the first paragraph, which says that the lease is type 2 right in the Phoenix Active Management Area. And since they are the regulatory agency, I guess an argument could be made because we're within that management area, the laws and regulations, et cetera, contract. So if that's the case, then I would change my vote to yes.
Okay. So we have 2 no and now 4 yes. Okay. Well, I was going to vote yes, but I wanted to carry forth these concerns to the governing board because we did not have a unanimous decision. John?
Another a comment. What harm or what what is the negative of putting something in that in the contract that says if Briarwood exceeds the 250, that we get some compensation? I mean, is this going to like be a deal breaker for Briarwood or prejudice our relationship with them in any way? I'm searching for more information to.
This is Katie. I do think there's a misunderstanding between wet water and paper water. So the agency that pumps the water is responsible for reporting their water usage every year. They have their own pump, and they could pump 1,000 gallons out of that. It's not our wet water, it's their wet water, but they are obligated to report to ADWR every year. We pumped 1,000 gallons. We have a paper contract here for 250 gallons from Sun City West. We have a water right over here for X number of acre feet. So they're responsible for reporting that, and we have no authority to enforce any of that. ADWR has all the authority. To put it in the contract is redundant. We have no enforcement to say, well, ADWR, you need to get on their back about this. So I just think there's a misunderstanding between the paper water and the wet water. When we bought our water rights for the expansion area golf courses, that was actually a water right that came from an Indian reservation on the east side of town. So again, it's not the water that's under the ground, it's all the paper that we say, look, we've got this water right on paper that allows us to pump this, and then we show them how much the pump reported at the end of the year. So it's in place, it's part of the Groundwater Management Act the ADWR enforces that.
Katie, that helps. If I'm, this is a little test to see if I'm understanding what you said. If regardless of how much water they pump, it doesn't affect us as long as there is wet water in the ground for us to pump.
They could do it right now. They could turn that pump on and pump 10,000 acre
Okay.
feet. And it's not.
I was not understanding this as well as the last two speakers have clarified in my mind what this contract is dealing with. So thank you both.
And just to allay fears, as all the agricultural land around us have turned into home projects, there's actually more water underground because agriculture takes more water. So the issue really is not that there's not enough water under the ground. I mean, we look at these 50 homes going in next door, they had to show ADWR on paper that they have a 100-year assured water supply. And that water may have been anywhere else in this AMA. It didn't have to be water physically under the ground because the aquifer is actually connected through that whole AMA for the most part. So it's not our responsibility at all. It's their responsibility at the end of the reporting year to say, here's this piece of paper and this piece of paper that account for this wet water over here.
That helps. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a vote of 4-2. I will move this forward to the governing board at the workshop and share the concerns that were voiced today, just as an FYI for the board. Moving along, Pete, you have an update on the Chartered Club's receivables.
Thank you. I believe, Kathy, you wanted a little more detail. So hopefully this will satisfy that. There are, I believe, the 5 agreements that have been entered into it. The most large amount owed is by ARC, but that comes up down the road. Pickleball expanded their R.H. Johnson presence back in 2016. They had a 10-year repayment term. The amount was $343,000, and you can see over the past years, they've more than met their obligation. And in fact, I think 3 years ago, they went into overdrive on trying to extinguish this amount due. And they started to say, we'll pay 376,854 installments. So in November, I believe in the rest of this calendar year, they have intention of making that final payment. The ARC is, I mentioned, the largest one. They had 2 phases. 2014, they had the initial building for $899,000. They had, I believe, some level of an endowment that was made by a benefactor. And then they've been making payments, which for the most part, I think most people know this, but they run a lottery every year to auction off a vehicle, and then they get, $100 certificates, and that's their biggest fundraiser. That comes up in a few minutes when I'll talk about that, but they have varying amounts. And then in fiscal year 18-19, they initiated a new paint extension into that ARC building, and then have made various amounts. And then, quite bluntly, you can kind of see that they got hurt by COVID. They did not have a lottery of any magnitude a year ago, and they didn't have one this spring. So they reached into some of their reserves and made some token payments, but they have till 2029 by the agreement that was renewed in the contract that was made in the 18-19 to have all of their aggregate amount paid by the end of 2029. So it's our understanding that they still have the resources over 9 years to make $50,000 payments. They should still be in good shape. Tennis Club in 2016 as well had a portion of their new, I am blanking out for a second on what their function was. So it was some restoration on their property. So I do apologize. I should be more versed on that. But $44,000 was the original amount, and they make payments of some regularity. They also have naming rights placed upon their building by MIMOs, and oftentimes that is immediately sent right over to the association to pay on their debt. Stained Glass was our most recent one. They made a commitment to apply $50,000 when their space was expanded over at Palm Ridge. They made a $5,000 payment a year ago, and we were pleased to see that they actually made an additional $10,000 about 30 days ago. So they're on track to stay consistent with their $30,000 remaining debt. And the last one is probably our most troubled one, if you want to call it that. But it has a whole bunch of sidebars that came into it, and perhaps Bill will want to expand. But 5-second version is this is the meditation garden over at Beardsley. And when the agreement was made, there were agreements put in place for a $750 payment to be made every month from the Rotary to the association, and that was being followed quite religiously. Again, I leave this for maybe Bill to expand a little bit more, but there seemed to have been some discourse, discussion, I should say, between the outgoing general manager, Mr. Whiting, and the Rotary to suspend that payment. And then the agreement was somewhat altered to say that any bricks that are made by people who want to, make a lasting memory of a relative or a dog or anybody, they buy a brick, and then 50% of that brick proceeds go to extinguish this loan. But you can kind of see that those have been relatively few and far between. So as we sit here today, we have an agreement for payment, but it's going to be quite a while, in our opinion, before we see this loan compensated.
Have they not sold any bricks in the last year or two?
A few,
But
and
they haven't given us any money?
They have. There was like Pete said, there was a miscommunication between the former GM and the administrators of the Rotary Group. I think Mike basically told them that the $750 a month, they could kind of hold off because the brick sales were waning. Just pay us as you continue. And I think the sentence may have stopped at lunch when they said, just kind of as brick sales are waning, don't worry about it. And so there was some confusion there. We actually brought the Rotary folks in, as well as Mr. Whiting, to kind of clear this subject up and basically got the understanding back under control where it is now. As you sell bricks, the 50% thing is still in order, but they're just not selling bricks. It has picked up, I think, a little bit in spring. I think we may have installed 7 or 10, but that's it. And now dealing with the Rotary Club has not been the easiest. They're not the easiest folks in which to make contact with, and we are kind of trying to figure out whether or not we just take the program over and get reimbursed with the sale of our own bricks and move the thing forward.
I'm incredibly disappointed because I've been a Rotarian for over 20 years, not with this club, but
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah, we've met with
not the
them
way
several times.
Rotarians
and-
normally operate.
Yeah, it's just been a slow go for them, and finding volunteers and that type of thing. I think to take the program on has been a little bit of a struggle for them, but we're trying to help. But as we move forward with what we're seeing, it's almost to the point where let us put a nice brochure together and advertise the facility and take it on ourselves.
And we would keep 100%.
well, the
Yes,
only Achilles heel in that is they're a 501c3. So if you were making a contribution, you'd be able to claim that as a donation. Well, that'd be just
Yeah.
something you want to do of your own accord if we went that route. So
I understand. Oh, you're not done with your presentation
that
yet.
is the last of the individual details. So overall, we've extended 1.8 million, payments of $1.5 million. So ARC represents about 80% of the remaining balance, and you've saw the detail on all the rest. So relatively comfortable that the agreements are in place for this receivable to be captured over the next 8 to 10 years.
Okay, let's go around and entertain any questions that we have. This doesn't require any action on our part, but it is an FYI. So Kathy, I'm going to start with you. You'd kind of started this discussion for
Great.
us.
This is exactly what I was interested in, and is a good presentation. The only other question I have, and I think it was one of the original questions that prompted part of this for me, was, do we have a policy as to how much Sun City West pays versus the clubs, to see if we were consistent in that? As I recall, Sun City West obligation was for capital improvement, replacement, deferred maintenance, what we would have normally paid. So the only thing I would add, and you don't have to do this now, but maybe this report is annual or something like that, is what was Sun City West's share, how much was of that deferred maintenance or replacement costs, so you have a little bit better balance of the order of magnitude in the bigger picture. So I thank you. I think this is well done. Thank you.
Well, if I may interject, that's one of the questions I had when I first got here, was you just are seeing that while I've given you the detail of the amounts extended, there are just as many methods in which those amounts were reached. Without boring you to tears, some were just agreements made, in the form of practically an email, or, hey, we're building out, an extension, what can you contribute, to a formal contract, i.e. like ARC was for building a building and it's all arranged. So the clarity that we would ever have for doing these in the future would need to be defined. But then I want to remind you that it's interesting you bring that up, because quite bluntly, we can't find anything in the policies that would say this is a practice that should have been entered into, and as we speak, that's why I think this may be the last of them.
Yeah, we are where we are. And that's exactly where I was trying to get at. I'm not trying to say gotcha, it's just, what do we have for financial protections in this?
Right. Kathy, if I may, Katie, can we back up one slide at a time? So there's the Rotary Club with a $22,000 balance. They're a 501c3 organization, and we think, if we can get them motivated, right, to sell some bricks and stuff, we can get that taken care of. That's the game at play there. 501c3, good. 501c7, Stained Glass Club, basically offered to pay off some debt regarding their new improvements over there, but the way they were doing that, I think, falls right in line, I think, with the next agenda item that we're going to be talking about, is how these people are paying off this debt. And in the world of the IRS, they're not doing it correctly. So that's something we have to address. Same thing with tennis. By and large, naming rights and advertising are what's paying off the debt here, and according to IRS code, not really good. Auto restoration, the big ticket of the $700 and something thousand that is still outlaying, $564,000 of that is auto restoration. That is a 501c3, so that is still good, and the methods that they use to pay off that debt is perfect. So all good there. Pickleball, in speaking with their club administrators, I think they've got in the bank, and they are anticipating making that payment in September, so that one goes away. So that's good, but we still need to tackle the next agenda item, but moving forward, I think we're kind of.
Thank you, Bill. Do you have any other comments, Kathy?
Nope.
Harry?
No, I assume going forward that we probably won't be entering into a lot of these agreements.
Luke?
So the impact of the 501c7 regarding this loan process will preclude us from doing this in the future?
The way we currently have been doing it, yes, sir, absolutely. The money going directly to the clubs. If we, as the governing board, decide you want to do naming rights and advertising, why not, those agreements come through you, be it the governing board 501c4,
Not to the clubs.
not to the
Okay.
clubs.
So moving forward, clubs can still request funding, but the process for the repayment of that funding changes. Is that correct?
If there is a process for repayment, we're not under the assumption that clubs need to, if clubs come forward with a request.
That's exactly where I was going. If I understood prior conversations, it was we, the residents, pay a rec center fee each year, and it is the responsibility of the rec center to, in fact, accommodate clubs that may need expansion, changes, et cetera.
Chartered clubs.
Chartered clubs, correct. Thank you. So if a charter club comes to the governing board and makes a request, the governing board approves it, that's fine. The process goes on and everybody's happy. Now the governing board says, nah, we don't agree that you need to have an additional 300 square feet of XYZ space. What is the club's recourse? Chartered club's recourse?
Come back with another request.
But
really, I mean, it's going to be based on individual request on individual request, right? It's going to flow through our process on how we get things into our reserve fund and how things come out based on need, right? So those kinds of things are going to have to all be presented by the club and staff to determine and provide the governing board enough information to make a good decision. Do we need 50 more pickleball courts, right? If the governing board says no, based on the numbers and the data that we provide you, that's really all we can go on. And so really it's going to be based on based on need and desire and want and available funding. But going out as a 501c7 and generating outside revenue is what we're trying to educate people about and steer them away from IRS code violation.
Okay. So in our bylaws, our policies, there is, the word loan doesn't exist. So will we have, should we entertain the thought of having a policy so that clubs at least have a direction in which to request this?
And I believe that exists now in the form of the guidelines that we have put together regarding donations, memorializations, advertising, and what am I missing?
Sponsorships.
Sponsorships. There's a guideline booklet that has now been developed. And so now when those opportunities present themselves, we have a way to react.
Thanks, Bill, appreciate it. No more questions.
Gary?
About time. This will make things fair and equitable for all the clubs. It's kind of a squeaky wheel deal before. It's good to know that a club has an alternative if they can come up with funding to do this on their own, but it should go through the review process as anything else would that we're going to expend as a community, and this will get us on the right track. Good work.
Lisa?
I agree. I think everybody's covered everything that I wanted to talk about, so.
Thank you. John?
My questions have been answered.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. The last item we have is an update on this Chartered Clubs Tax Status Special Committee. And I've been pleased that Gary and Lisa have both been on the committee, along with Bill and Pete, Tim D'Angelo from accounting, Riley, who's our Chartered Club manager with the rec centers, and Ken Holtz has been on. I hope I have not missed anyone. Anyway, we've had, Gary has represented, we have three classes that we discovered of clubs. These are the 501c7 clubs. Does not include auto restoration. It does not include the Friends of the Library. And is there another 501c3? Radio station, thank you very much. It includes only the 501c7 charter clubs, which is the majority of our clubs. Gary was there to represent clubs that have a lot of guest members, and those are predominantly card-playing clubs and dance groups, bringing a lot of guests from outside of our walls, and also sometimes instructors. Ken Holtz was there representing clubs that have done sponsorships and advertising, those type of things. Those would primarily be softball, pickleball, and tennis. Are those, did I get all three of them? That's all it. Okay, and then Lisa was there not only as a member of BNF, but also she is a member of some craft clubs. She's been an educator for them, and they're clubs that sell items. So we've had a few meetings. We had a lot to discuss with our attorney, and the meetings were closed because of the legal issues. But about a week or so ago, a memo went out to the officers of every club telling them about the issues that we've encountered with this tax status, and I think I've been over all of that with you in the past. And Riley has set up meetings. I believe the first one is today at 1 o'clock. And that, is that the one that's with the clubs that we really don't think there's any problem with? They're the ones that they don't make things, they don't sell things, they don't bring in guests, they don't have anything going on with them.
And that's the largest percentage of our
That's the
clubs.
largest percentage of it. And as I've tried to explain to a lot of people, like most things, we're pretty close to the 80-20 rule. And even within many of our clubs that are craft clubs, you still got a lot of the 80-20. But we do need to make sure we're compliant. Then tomorrow, there will be another meeting at 9 o'clock. I don't know what group that is. That's going to be some of them that bring in guests, a lot of outside guests or instructors who charge. And then at 1 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon will be the clubs that have a lot of sales that are running butting up against the IRS guideline. The idea is we're going to let the clubs know more about what it entails. Some of the clubs will be able to say, no big deal, does not apply to us, thank you. And we are forewarned if we ever decide that we are going to have sponsorship for Georgia's ice skating team or anything like that. That president of the ice skating team, which is George, of course, will know now that anything he wants to do in the way of advertising or sponsorships will come directly to the rec centers. It will then be incumbent upon any of the clubs that may be having issues to get their own tax and legal advice and decide how they will move forward. So, Bill, I don't know if I've covered everything. Do you have anything you'd like to add to this?
Excuse me, like Ann said, we are meeting for the next couple of days with 100-some clubs. So we'll be just providing a little bit of education on the subject thereof. Just go ahead and roll through this real quick. I'm not even going to talk about all this in great detail with you here today, but really we're going to go over what a 501c7 social club is, how these organizations are, what they're really intended to be. We have rules, regulations, and procedures for chartered clubs that have been defined. So basically, we want to touch on the hot points that are in our rules and regulations that have been in existence forever. The funny thing about this is we haven't changed a thing. Policies and the rules and regs have been in place forever, but it's just seemingly somewhere within the last 10 years, the train just kind of got off the track a little bit. And all we're trying to do is push this thing back on. So we're going to talk about advertising, which is one of the bigger ones that are causing a little bit of the problem for some of the outdoor sports groups. Just talk a little bit about how to render that. The non-member participation numbers that we're seeing in a lot of our dance groups and card-playing groups, we think we have a remedy for that. But essentially, if you're a group that likes to do that, we encourage you to do it. But when your numbers start getting exceeded by outside guests, that's a bit of a problem. And so how do we deal with that? Again, the rules and regulations that are in existence really spell it out. And so it's just more of an education process for them. Talk about the little bit of the tax status when you're providing these facilities available to the general public or by selling products not organized to really operate exclusively for pleasure or recreation. That is what the IRS is looking at as far as not being in compliance as a chartered club with a tax-exempt status, i.e. 501c7. Enter the world of arts and crafts, and, over time, this has kind of slipped into the world of cottage industry. And so it's what people do. I did it when I was retired. Heck, give me a wood shop and some time, I can make you anything. But it has turned into a profit center. And again, let's go back to our policies, let's go back to our rules, and it clearly states what should and should not be done for reasons of taxation. So again, we'll talk a little bit today about the rules and regulations that exist, and any organization that exceeds these limits in the eyes of the IRS as far as you bringing in more money than your membership and your club members are providing is a problem once it hits that magical 15% number. So the financial statements that we are providing at the end of the year for the clubs basically talk about exactly that, the 35% of their gross receipts, and then 15% of that cannot come from the general public's use of the facilities or the sales of services. And so, again, it's just more of an educational thing. We are now providing you on your financial report an easy way to check that CR7, which we require all clubs to provide us, basically is a detailed listing of all of their revenues. The following side page says where the revenues are coming from, whether they're from members or non-members. If you calc out the bottom of the non-member revenue, and as you can see by that example, it hit a 30% mark, follow that over where you're only allowed 15%. It's a very telltale tool to use as far as letting these clubs know exactly where they're at. And so that's just an educational thing for us. And again, if they have any questions at all relative to what we're trying to explain today, please talk to a qualified accountant that hopefully answers your questions. But I think this is an attempt to get everything back on the track, and we should be in good shape.
I think Bill has said it best at several meetings. The train's off the track. We don't know how it got off the track. We don't have anybody we're going to blame, and it wouldn't do us any good anyway. Let's just get it back on the track. And that's where we are with it. So does anybody have any questions about this? Yeah.
Question, Bill. I read the letter that you sent to the clubs. Very, very good letter, very well done, and I thought it laid out the information very well. The only question I've got is, in the letter, you talked about the clubs getting their own accountant, their own tax attorney. My suggestion would be that you make a recommendation of an accountant or a tax attorney who has reviewed the situation, understands the situation, because otherwise you're going to have them go and finding accountants and attorneys, as they're known to do, fight each other all the time, and you'll have nothing but a Donnybrook between accountants and attorneys. So I think if you made a recommendation that these people are well-versed in that and take that to the clubs, you'd be helping the clubs in solving a problem.
I can do. And would you like commission? No. Just
Looking back, are there any IRS impacts that we need to worry about as a 501c4?
I cannot answer that. Obviously, the IRS is not knocking at our door.
Understood.
And so what we're trying to do is, I think, in the eyes of the IRS, if they ever did come looking back, we're doing the right thing in, again, putting the train back on the track. We're not really making suggestions to look the other way, oh, keep going, they'll never find us, and that kind of thing. Because it's potentially sizable. They can go back as far as they want, be it the IRS, and if we want to look at the last 10 years.
It's significant.
Yes, it is.
I think the word is significant.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we're trying to clean it up.
Thank you.
Kathy?
No questions.
Gary? Lisa?
I have one question. It kind of goes in line with what Harry was talking about. And you can correct me, Bill, if I'm wrong, but reading through, I think one of the policies, there was something that said that the clubs, should they seek outside counsel for anything, it has to be ran through the rec center for, do you remember, Harry, what that policy, I don't have my book with me. What was it?
And that's kind of why I was bringing up what I did, because
I just couldn't remember the policy, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys were giving them the go-ahead.
Yeah. Can do.
Good catch, Lisa and Harry. Other than that, no comment.
Does anyone else in the audience, George, trying to see, Sue? Sue, our incoming president is here. We have one guest. Thank you for being here. Does anyone have any comments?
I would just like to thank this committee and everybody who served on it this year. Even though it was a COVID year, one of the things that people have not looked at is the things that have moved forward and been accomplished and been looked at, questions and things that have been pushed aside for many years. And I just want to personally thank the committee for taking the opportunity to put the train, as Bill says, back on the track, but also ask the pertinent questions to get it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would say it's been our pleasure. We've had our share of some challenges this year, but I think we have accomplished a lot. Do we have any guest comments? First of all, does any of the committee have any other comments they'd like to make? John?
No.
Lisa? No. Gary? Kathy?
No,
You don't look convinced.
I'll make my comment. As someone who has a law degree, you can work with attorneys on putting clauses in contracts that would be to the benefit of Sun City West. What we are doing is selling an asset to Briarwood. It reminds me of your first question, Lou. If we have a bank, can we not go out and sell that? And so I would deeply ask to reconsider something in there, because this contract goes through 2034, and water is a major issue in this world, and we have to protect ourselves and look out for the future.
No.
Guess I better put my mic on. It shows that our next meeting will be June 1st, but Pete, I believe you will be on a well-deserved vacation at that time. And I'm going to go ahead and make the decision that we will cancel that meeting. I don't believe that we have any business that will come before this committee that would then go on to the board workshop, other than things we've discussed today. Our next meeting would then be on the 15th of June. I've already been told Kathy will be gone, Gary will be gone, John, you will be gone. That leaves 1, 2, 3 members. Okay, so we have 4 members that will be here. You said you could be available by phone. Okay. No, I'm not going to bother John. He's going to that foreign country. And Kathy, I know, is going to be traveling. So it may be that the only thing on that agenda is the review of the May financials. Pete, do you know of anything else at this point in time?
Just the standard updates that we do on capital. which
Okay,
are-
that may be meeting that we could have all by join me if necessary, or we'll meet here. We'll just cross that bridge when we come to it. We'll get closer to that. But June 15th would be the next meeting. We're going to go ahead and cancel the meeting on June 1st. And because this will be the last time we're together, I just want to give a public thank you to all of you who have served on this committee this year. It's been an excellent committee. I think we've gotten a lot accomplished. As I've said about other groups I've been on, we may not all hold hands and sing Kumbaya all the time, but we do know how to get things done. And I think we all know how to disagree without being disagreeable, and that is very important in any group. So I thank all of you for your service. I'm losing 3 of you to the board. I really didn't plan on that, but you'll have good service for our community on the board. And anyone out there who might be listening to this and you're interested in this community, please go ahead and fill out an application to be on the committee for next year, because I will be looking for more members to join the veterans who are left. And with that, we are adjourned at 11:14 a.m. Thank you for hanging in there.